Thank you to the panel for being here for such an interesting conversation. Like so many have already said, the title of the hearing raises eyebrows, but I'm not going to spend much time on the title of the hearing itself. But I do want to spend some time on progress and what progress looks like under pro-growth policies and responsible regulations. We saw before the pandemic, over the 3 years that preceded the pandemic, we saw incomes grow at the bottom quintile faster than the top quintile. We saw the fact that America's unemployment rate of 3.5% also led to the lowest African American unemployment rate of 5.2%, for Hispanics about 4%. We saw great gains in labor force participation rate, as well as we saw home ownership go up. And when you think about the wealth gap, you do have to stop for a moment and pause on the fact that we saw home ownership grow during those years from 41.7% to 46.4%, which is the highest it's been since 2004. So you look at the Great Recession, African American homeownership had not been higher than it was in 2019 than it was in 2004. That is a record because it leads us towards the ability to gain equity in something, an asset that works and increases even while you're sleeping. And that is the chasm between the have and the have-nots in this country. It's driven right through this conversation around equity and margin. And for us to understand that, I think the education system that Dr. Lowry and Mr. Toomey were having earlier is an important part of the equation, frankly. The fact of the matter is that the only parents who do not have school choice are poor parents, and those are consistently African American and Hispanic parents. And that correlation between positive education options in every zip code does translate to what kind of income you earn in the workforce, and frankly, how long you stay in school. We know that 3 or 4 years ago, we saw the statistics around what your income looks like if you drop out of high school. It was around $19,000. If you graduate from high school, it's around $29,000. If you get a bachelor's degree, it was around $58,000, and a master's even beyond that as well. So we know that there is a correlation between your educational achievement and your income, and we know that there's consistently a correlation between your income and your home ownership, and we know there's a correlation between your home ownership and your net worth. So let me slow it down for just a second so I can ask Dr. Lowry a couple of questions. Number one, on home ownership, the fastest way to close the wealth gap from my perspective and my personal experience as a kid who grew up in poverty in a single parent household, who nearly flunked out of high school because I did not see the importance of education, who became a business owner, who understood that it's better to create jobs and not just have a job. It's better for us to have profit and income. So on home ownership is the opportunity for us to see that profit. Can you talk for just a minute or two, or frankly less, since I only have a minute or two left, about the importance of closing the wealth gap through home ownership?
I think it's very important. Note, however, that I would not have made it closing the racial wealth gap. I would have just made it empowering people, American people of all races, to avail themselves of the opportunities in this great country. I can recall my friend Robert Woodson of the Woodson Center in Washington working with public housing residents in Washington, D.C., formulating developments. This is way back when Jack Kemp was Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, to allow for residents to acquire equity ownership stake in their apartments and public housing. Very transformative on a small scale, one little experiment, but nevertheless. So no, I think this is very important. Giving people a stake, creating incentives, giving them a way of being able to shape their own futures, empowering them. That's the way to go.
Well, you talked about the creativity between Jack Kemp and Robert Woodson that is celebrated from many folks who've read and millions who've understood that concept. We've heard a lot about democratization of the market. I'm a simpleton, so I like to just think about it as easy access to owning stocks. The average household in this country, about half of them, have stocks. African Americans, about, I think it's 31%, have a stock portfolio. Average balance is around $12,000. Hispanics, about 28%, average balance around $11,000. The democratization of the market really means that the fees associated with getting involved goes down, 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 and now it's down to zero. The impact of such a opportunity on closing the wealth gap, Dr. Lowry.
Well, this is just underscoring how corporate America, Wall Street, whatnot, ought not to be constructed as the enemy. They are not our enemy necessarily. I mean, they ought not to go without regulation and oversight.
Of
On the
course.
other hand, we all have a stake in the prosperity of the economy, and many of us are indirectly shareholders in that process. The more democratic, the more widely spread is this opportunity to share in the fruits of American economic growth, the better.
So Larry, my parting comments, thank you, Chairman Brown, for my time. I would simply say that what you said there may be misinterpreted. What you mean by having a stake in the market and households is called your 401k and your retirement systems are already in the market. Therefore, we have more Americans who are involved in the market than we know of because we don't necessarily appreciate that powerful engine of retirement systems. It's one of the reasons why I've worked with Bob Johnson, the creator of BET, to make sure that those small dollar investors in their 401ks can transfer it as the jobs move on, because it's really important for us to stop the leakage in the 401ks. It's another part of creating access to wealth and opportunities in the future by having the next you, your retired you, having the resources necessary to be self-supportive. Thank you. My time ran out so fast. I look forward to having another conversation. Have a good one.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator Cortez Masto from Nevada.